January 23, 1947. On quiet British streets, children hurried to school, factory whistles blew, and families wrapped scarves a little tighter. Winter as usual, or so it seemed. Everyday details: residential streets, commuters, families, factories. A calm tone, a subtle sense of threat. Beneath this routine lay the beginnings of a disaster. The coldest months in centuries were about to grip the nation for 55 relentless days, reaching temperatures below -20. No one realized how swiftly ordinary life would vanish, but no one saw what was coming. Snow began to fall and did not stop. By the end of January, each morning brought a fresh layer, covering rooftops, clogging alleyways, and settling into drifts along fences and hedgerows. The Met Office recorded snow somewhere in the country every day, an unbroken run that would last for 55 days. In towns and villages, people woke to find paths blocked, doors frozen shut, and familiar streets transformed into narrow corridors between high white banks. Temperatures dropped lower than most could remember. On some nights, the thermometer plunged below -21 degrees Celsius. Pipes froze solid. Icicles hung from guttering like glass knives. Cold crept into every corner, seeping through walls and under doors, numbing hands and stiffening boots. In the Cotswolds, snow piled so high that garden gates vanished. On the North Yorkshire moors, fields disappeared beneath a white silence that muffled every sound. Newsreels showed children tunneling through drifts to reach their schools, and farmers shoveling for hours just to free a single barn door. Each day, the snow deepened, and the world grew smaller. At first, people shrugged it off as another hard winter, but as the days stretched on, the weight of snow pressed down on roofs, on roads, on routines. It became an adversary, relentless and patient, settling in for a siege no one had imagined. In the heart of the city, traffic moved more slowly. Snowbanks pressed against the curbs, narrowing lanes until only a single car could pass at a time. Buses crawled along their routes, engines straining in the cold, while shopkeepers swept doorsteps in vain, the powder returning as quickly as it was cleared. Along the river, the Thames wore a jagged collar of ice that thickened with each bitter night. Barges sat trapped against the embankments, their hulls locked in place. On bridges, pedestrians paused to watch the flow of broken ice, a sight not seen in decades. In the suburbs, drifts rose shoulder-high along garden walls. Footpaths vanished beneath white ridges, and hedges disappeared entirely. Children tested the depth with sticks, finding only more snow beneath the crust. Milkmen and postmen struggled through waist-deep powder, deliveries delayed or abandoned altogether. Rural lanes twisted between frozen fields, the only tracks those left by a single cart or a lone walker. Every morning, the world seemed smaller. Windows frosted over from the inside, water pumps seized up, and the familiar sound of running water faded from kitchens and sculleries. By late January, the cold stretched beyond inconvenience. It pressed on the city's routines, slowed deliveries, and made the old ways of keeping warm feel suddenly inadequate. No one spoke yet of crisis, but the signs were everywhere. The river locked in ice, the silent streets, the snow that never melted. Beneath the stillness, pressure was building on transport, on supplies, on every system that kept daily life moving. The weather was not letting go. Coal piled high at the pit heads, but it might as well have been locked in a vault. The frost reached deep into the stockpiles, turning loose lumps into frozen blocks that no shovel could break. Railway wagons, 750,000 of them, sat idle on sidings, trapped by snowdrifts and ice. For days, trains could not move. Coal that powered the nation's homes and factories was stranded, just out of reach. In boardrooms and ministries, reports from the National Coal Board grew more urgent. The numbers were stark, Power stations were burning through dwindling reserves, and deliveries had slowed to a trickle. The Minister of Fuel and Power, Emmanuel Shinwell, faced a choice with no good outcome. On the 28th of January, the government issued an order. Electricity would be rationed, factories would close, and domestic supply would be restricted to just 19 hours a day. The announcement was carried in newspapers and read on the radio, but the reality arrived in silence. Lights flickered and died in kitchens and parlors. Street lamps went dark. The hum of machinery faded from industrial towns. In some places, even the radio fell quiet. Broadcasts cut short to save what little power remained. The emergency measures were blunt and sweeping, but there was no alternative. Coal could not be moved, and the country's lifeblood, heat, light, and work began to drain away. What had started as a distant problem at the mines now pressed against every window and door. The cold outside was matched by a new chill within, as families waited in the half-light for news, for warmth, for the return of ordinary life. Factories emptied in the middle of the working day. Sirens that once signaled shift changes now sounded for closures, echoing through streets lined with shuttered shop fronts. In the Midlands, thousands of workers filed home, their pay packets lighter with each passing week. Notices in factory windows spelled out the reality. Closed until further notice. No coal. Inside terraced houses and city flats, families gathered in the half-light. The electricity faded, then vanished altogether. Children read by candle, their breath rising in small clouds. In kitchens, mothers wrapped their youngest in scarves and extra jumpers, rationing the warmth from a single smoldering fire. Blankets, wool, patchwork, anything at hand, were pulled from cupboards and layered on beds, chairs, laps. Some hung rugs over doorways to block the drafts. Others heated bricks in the oven while the power lasted, carrying them to bedrooms as makeshift hot water bottles. A mass observation diarist wrote that there was no electric, no coal, and people huddled under blankets. Another described the silence, the hum of the mill gone, only the wind and the ticking clock. In the city, shopkeepers set out candles for sale, their windows dark except for a single flickering flame. Street lamps stayed dark, and neighbors carried torches between houses. With each blackout, the ordinary rituals of evening, radio news, tea by the fire, homework at the table, became distant memories. In some homes, the only light came from a sliver beneath the door, where a neighbor's candle still burned. The world shrank to a few cold rooms, a handful of dim faces, and the hope that the power might return before morning. Railways, once the arteries of the country, fell silent beneath the snow. By mid-February, over 750,000 wagons, most of them loaded with coal or food, stood locked in sidings, their wheels frozen to the rails. Main lines vanished under drifts as high as a man's shoulder. Snow bulletins from the rail executive reported entire stretches of track impassable for days. In the north, a passenger train bound for London became trapped near Norwood Junction, its carriages buried in white, passengers huddled together through the night, burning packing crates to keep warm. Crews worked by hand, shoveling for hours just to clear a few yards. Across the country, trains waited for rescue that came too late or not at all. With each day, the network grew more tangled, the backlog more impossible. The lifelines of Britain had frozen in place, sealing towns and cities into isolated pockets of cold and quiet. Soldiers arrived in convoys, boots crunching on frozen roads before dawn. The Royal Engineers set to work, shovels and bulldozers clearing drifts that swallowed tracks and buried villages. In the Calder Valley, men from the 53rd Field Squadron hacked through snow walls as tall as a lorry, escorting coal wagons inch by inch toward power stations. Army trucks rolled into cut-off towns, delivering sacks of coal and crates of tinned food. In the hills above Upper Teesdale, RAF Dakotas circled low, dropping supplies to farms marooned for weeks. Uniformed men became a daily sight, digging, hauling, handing out bread at church halls. Each operation was urgent, improvised, and relentless. Civilian authority faded into the background as the crisis demanded a military answer. Britain's infrastructure cracked under 55 days of relentless snow, but memory fades faster than ice melts. As energy systems face new threats and winters grow less predictable, the old lesson stands. Resilience is forgotten until crisis returns. Vulnerability never truly disappears. It just waits for silence to settle.